Greetings and welcome to another episode of Association Matters, the official PCAAE podcast for conversations on governance, leadership, and impact in the association sector. Because when associations thrive, societies rise. We are your hosts. I'm Bobby.
And I'm Emily. And the topic for today's podcast is bringing a mission to life. How to build a community that is connected, informed, and inspired. For modern associations, having a mission statement is simply not enough. The real challenge is to bring that mission to life in ways that create meaningful connections, deliver relevant knowledge, and inspire members to actively engage with the community. Successful chambers and associations are evolving beyond the traditional services to become ecosystem builders that create spaces for collaboration, innovation, learning, and shared growth.
So in this episode, we speak with Petra Hemmes, Executive Director of the Dutch Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, about how associations and chambers can cultivate communities that are connected, informed, and inspired. Drawing from her leadership experience in an internationally diverse business environment, Petra will share insights on mission-driven leadership, strategic partnership, member engagement, and the practical steps organizations can take to create stronger and more engaged or energized communities.
As Bobby mentioned, Petra leads DutchCham's operations, membership, stakeholder engagement, and strategic direction. Petra has worked and lived in several countries, such as the Netherlands, the UK, Singapore, and Austria, bringing extensive experience in community building, event management, marketing, and business networking.
Hi, Petra. We're very delighted to have you with us in this podcast. Thank you for gracing this podcast. So let's start our conversation. When you talk about bringing a mission to life, building community that's connected, informed, and inspired, how do you stay focused on delivering that mission, and how do you make sure that opportunities you pursue really align with it?
I think it's very important to listen to your members and keep talking to them as the process goes on. I think the landscape changes quickly. So when you had a plan and said, okay, well, this is going to be an idea that's going to work really well, 6 months later, 12 months later down the line, the landscape might have changed and those things might not be as relevant as they were before. So keep your finger on the pulse and keep having conversations with your members, with your stakeholders is very important to us.
How do you keep that connection with your community? Do you provide surveys for them? Do you have working groups?
We have several volunteer groups, our committees. So they're mainly topical based. So we have a tech committee, we have a sustainability committee, a startup SME committee, to name but a few. And our members volunteer to be in those committees and they talk about the topics relevant to them. And that then leads us to have more in-depth either events about those topics that they help us with, or an article in our newsletter, or an article for our online channels. So it helps that way. We do have an annual member survey, but I think actually by being present at the committee meetings, by being present at the events, speaking to people all the time, that keeps you engaged.
That's so true, that human connection. There's nothing better than an actual conversation.
Correct. Yep.
Our next question is, we often see chambers working with other organisations and international networks. I personally love watching what DutchCham is doing on LinkedIn, and you have so many wonderful events happening. How do those collaborations help you build a more connected and engaged community? And what kind of feedback do you hear from your members around these wider opportunities? Maybe you've got a story to share?
I think it's very interesting to collaborate with other associations in Singapore. There are many. Obviously, it's a very international community, and either to work with other national chambers, to name but a few, but also across sectors. So if we have an event, say, on the maritime sector, there are other countries that are just as experienced in that field as we are. So to compare stories and to be there, I think is a really good thing. And I think recently our startup SME committee and community is growing. There are a lot of more startup communities in Singapore. It's a very vibrant scene here. We've done several just coffee meetings in the morning with other chambers. So we actually this week had a meeting with the Spanish chamber, also with entrepreneurs. There was just entrepreneurs talking to each other, learning from each other's mistakes, just seeing what happens when you start a company, where can you help each other. And it might not be something big, might just having another coffee and to go through, how do you set up a bank account? How do you do this? Practical things. But it's just having a colleague, because of course, if you're on your own as an entrepreneur, you don't have a colleague. So it's nice to have them that way. Yeah.
Right. Wonderful. I know that Singapore is very entrepreneurial, and there are, as you mentioned, small and medium enterprises. So, can you share a story where, you mentioned that they're talking to each other, helping each other. I know that there's a big organization called Singapore Business Federation or something.
Correct. Yeah,
I used to
SBF. Yeah.
yes. So are you also working with them or in a way, or some other, you mentioned other chambers like the Spanish chamber, etc.
Yeah.
Any additional insights from that partnerships and collaboration?
I think definitely on the Singapore side, we work well with EDB, the Economic Development Board.
Okay.
So they help companies once they've settled in Singapore to expand or to expand in the region. I think it's very interesting when companies first come into Singapore, and for them to then say, well, actually, I would like to expand in the region. How do I go about it? And to have a partner like
Right.
EDB is very helpful to them to know what their next steps are going to be because they're so experienced in that. Yeah.
Right.
Seems like such a supportive network within Singapore, a really positive and supportive one.
It is. I mean, yeah, like what we just said, it's a very entrepreneurial city, entrepreneurial country. So everyone wants to help each other. They don't do things out of, oh, I wouldn't like you to succeed. It's very much, oh, I would like to support you. If we all grow, we all do better. It's the weakest link in the chain story. If you help the chain, the chain will grow stronger. So I think that's very important here.
I love that.
Yeah, the other thing is on events, Petra, if I may, for instance, the Singapore Tourism Board has been actively promoting Singapore to be, a destination for meetings and events. How do you relate to let's say, this Singapore Tourism Board in terms of trying to attract events into Singapore? How does the chamber reach out or help in a way?
I think it helps that there are a lot of big exhibitions in Singapore mainly. I think that's very helpful for the business community here. For example, the Singapore International Water Week is coming up in June, to name but one. And then companies from the region will gather there and meet and discuss how they can take things forward. There's always big delegations coming in from the Netherlands for those big exhibitions. So new entrepreneurs to Singapore can see what it's like. And I think Singapore is very well set up for, like you say, bigger events, bigger meetings.
Right.
Yeah, it thrives on that. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for those additional insights. So our third and final question is for associations that want to create some sense of energy and connection, what do you think would be the one practical place where they can start with?
Yeah, I'll sound like a broken record, but I think listening is the most important thing. It's listening to your members and consistency, being there all the time. It doesn't change the fact that if you have a huge event one moment and then nothing 6 months, it has a worse effect than if you had a smaller event every month. Just being there and keeping that conversation going is way more important than the size of the event or the keynote speaker, for that matter. It's really about consistency and listening to what your members want to see or want to hear. What are their big topics at the moment? Can you assist them? Or if we can't do it ourselves, who can we collaborate with to do that? I think that's the key for us.
Yeah. Yeah. May I ask, Petra, how big is your staff in the Dutch chamber?
We have a lean and mean team. There's 4 of us, very active team, and we have a very active board as well. They help us and support us where they can, but there's only 4 of us. Yeah.
Okay, that's lean and mean. That's good.
Yep.
I love it. You're very active for a team of 4.
Yeah, and that's not 4 full-timers. I think we're less than 3 FTEs. So it's
Wow. That is so impressive, Petra, and I think it really speaks to the passion that your team must have as well.
Yes. I think we must practice what we preach. If we don't want to be in this space, then we shouldn't be in it. I think it's very much about people that want to listen, that are curious about what goes on in the various industries and want to work with that. And I think that's definitely what I can see in my team. And one of the things that I love seeing as well, if a company says, oh, would you like to come to our office and we can explain what we do? I love that. Looking in the kitchen of a company and seeing, okay, what are they dealing with? Some industries that you just don't know a lot about if you don't look into it. I think it's fascinating.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for those insights, Petra. And I know we threw in a couple of bonus questions. I apologize for putting you on the
That's all
spot,
right.
but
That's all right.
they were all so valuable, and we really appreciate it. To wrap up our sessions, we always have 3 key takeaways for our viewers. So number one, what I'm hearing there is to build a strong community, it starts with listening. I just love you. You didn't sound like a broken record. I think a good piece of advice can be repeated, and it really is about listening. So the organizations that stay connected and relevant are the ones that consistently check in with their members, understand what's changing in their world, and make sure every initiative, partnership, or event is genuinely supporting their mission and them, especially as I think industries might evolve, particularly around things changing so rapidly like AI. Sustainability is a big thing in Singapore, I understand, and innovation. That's really important. Key takeaway number 2 for me was partnerships matter because they create richer experiences. Members don't just want networking for the sake of networking. They want meaningful conversations. You touched on fresh perspectives, access to wider opportunities and across industries and international communities. And like you said, being able to learn from each other and being the team when you don't have one as an individual entrepreneur. And number 3, I think, is exactly what you said in that first line for that third question, which is creating energy in a community doesn't have to start with massive events or probably linked to that huge budgets or a fantastic keynote speaker. Consistency matters more than scale. So small but meaningful touch points, whether that's targeted events, peer discussions, those coffees that you spoke about. It's about those regular opportunities for interactions that what helps members feel heard, connected, and a part of something bigger over time.
So excellent, Emily, summary as always. And thank you again, Petra, for joining us and sharing your insights. So this podcast is brought to you by the Philippine Council of Association and Association Executives, by Members AMS and Pricing for Associations.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Subscribe to our podcast and visit the PCAAE website for updates and full episode notes. Until next time.